Hi, I'm Rebecca, I'm the psych coach, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how you can stop obsessing about your ex. It's often a part of relationships, isn't it? When you end, especially if it's not been an ending that you want, that you have a natural leaning towards obsessing about your ex, wondering what they're up to, talking about them, wanting to see them. It's a natural part of the grieving process. It's a part of us getting to a stage where we can accept our new reality, but you may be a long way off from that. But there are things you can do to try and help yourself and to get you on track for a healthier recovery sooner. That means stopping engaging in some of the behaviours you are probably naturally inclined to engage with. Because let's face it, a grieving process means losing something or someone. And of course, coupled with that is probably a desire to get them back, or indeed to at least think about what they're doing and what they're up to. In the event that you don't actually want to get back with your ex and actually you're glad it's finished, but you still find yourself obsessing about them, which too can be a normal part of the grieving process, there are things you can do to mitigate that. Okay, so what is rule number one? Well, rule number one is, of course, don't look at them on the internet. Whatever that is, whether that's looking at their WhatsApp picture, whether it's looking at them on their LinkedIn profile, Googling them, watching them on YouTube, it's unhealthy. As a cognitive behavioural therapist, I work from the basis that the way you think affects how you feel and how you behave. And of course, the way you behave affects how you feel and how you think. So if you constantly behave in an unhealthy way and look on the internet and see what your ex is up to, you are fueling the thinking, the obsession. That's the thought process. So disengage with that. Stop doing any kind of Google searching at all. Tip number two is to stop talking about them. Mentionitis can be an occupational hazard of a breakup. Mentionitis, where you constantly want to talk about the person, you constantly want to mention memories that you've had, experiences that you've had. Maybe you're just angry and you constantly want to go over the same ground of how bad they were and what they've done and how outrageous it was. But of course, doing that not only fuels the obsession, but if you're angry, fuels the fire on anger. And the more angry you are, the worse it is for yourself. This isn't about making it okay about what your ex has done, but it's about trying to make it okay in your head so you're not spending so much time obsessing. So talking about your ex, if it's an angry way or a reminiscing way, isn't healthy because you're fueling the fire. Especially in the case of anger, we often want to recruit allies. We often want to tell people about how outrageous it is that someone's done something, and then we want them to agree with us. And whilst that's a totally normal thing to do, it's not healthy and it will fuel the obsession. Tip number three is not to look at old photos. Sounds pretty basic, doesn't it? And damn modern technology for constantly showing you photos of what you were doing this time last year and what you were doing 5 years ago. But it's not helpful to look through old photos because you just trigger the obsessive thoughts, don't you? It's a waste of your time. Maybe in months to come, maybe in years to come, that will seem like a reasonable thing to do, and it's just something you want to healthily reflect on. And if that's the case, sure. But if you're obsessing and you're wanting to decrease the amount of time you're spending obsessing, looking at photos certainly isn't a behaviour that is consistent with that. So put a block on yourself. Remove the photos, put them into a file if you want to keep them, remove them from your memories, but don't allow yourself to look at them. Even if you can convince yourself that there's a reasonable reason why you want to look at them, don't. It's not helpful. Tip number four is to allocate obsessive time. If you really are finding that you are very much focusing on what your ex is up to, the ending of the relationship, what you were doing this time last year, etc., and you can't get a grip on it, then you need to try and allocate obsessive time. And that could be an hour in the afternoon and an hour in the evening, or whatever time it is that you can afford, but certainly not more than an hour at a time, where you can really obsess about your ex, think about all the things you want to, reminisce about them, feel angry about them, whatever it is, but then you stop. You have to train yourself to get used to the idea of just because I've got an obsessive thought that I want to engage with right away, I don't need to engage with it immediately. And by allocating obsessive time, you're training your brain into doing that. So allocate the obsessive time. And tip number 5 is to not try and find out what they're up to. I know that sounds rather like point number 1, which is don't Google them, but tip number 5 can include things like talking to family members, talking to friends of friends, just wanting to know how they're doing, maybe where they're living, have they got a partner yet? All the kinds of questions that you may convince yourself you're asking in an indirect way or in a sort of a seemingly irrelevant way, but they're actually very loaded with you, where you are pinned on the information you're going to hear, which is then going to give you a huge amount of information to sort of process. Again, it's not helpful. It makes no difference what they are up to, so don't try and extract information from people within your mutual circle, colleagues, friends, family, whatever. Leave it alone. I know it's really hard to put into practice the things I've said, and if you sort of slip off track, get back on track as quickly as possible. It's okay to slip and get back on track. What's not okay is to think, I've gone wrong for a day, so I'm just going to sort of do all the things I shouldn't do and carry on like that for the next week. If you slip, which is a normal part of human behaviour, get back on track. Don't look at the photos, don't talk about them, don't try and find out about them. Allocate obsessive time and stop doing the internet looking. Easier said than done, but put them into practice. You'll feel a lot better when you do that. If you've enjoyed today's tips, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will give you plenty more tips on how you can use psychology on a day-to-day basis.